When you raise prices annually, you're basing it on performance. How do you determine the percentage increase?
Back in the day, like 2014, I had a painting that was valued at $8,000 and it went to auction for $14,000. Now, if I had jumped from 8 to 14 for that size of work across the board, at that point, I would have lost my entire collector base because collectors grow with the artists. So 5 to 15% is something that's very palatable, but they're also very happy to see that the market is appreciating that I'm always dialoguing with them. And I say, hey, listen, you know, that piece that you bought in 2012 for $7,000 is now appraised at $24,000. And I want to make sure that your records are up to date, because if there is ever, God forbid, a catastrophic fire or a flood or anything that's going on, you want to make sure that that work is protected.
Welcome to American Dreams. I'm here today with Jason Borbay. Jason, welcome to today's show.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, Alan. It's an honor.
So, Jason, I met you in Teton Springs this summer, Teton Springs, Idaho, and we had great conversation there. And I'm glad that we can connect here today to have you come on the show, tell us about your life. You have an amazing story of how you got to where you are today. So for the listeners, let's just start in with, you know, your story. What your path in life?
All right. Thanks, Alan. Absolutely. So take it all the way back to the top. I was born on Long Island in 1980. I was all into sports. I ended up accepting a track scholarship to Boston University. Ran cross country, indoor and outdoor track. I was the captain there. Got a Bachelor of Fine Arts. And then when I left college, I was going to move to LA, become an actor. But I randomly crashed a reality show audition in Boston, ended up getting on this low budget reality show. I spent 6 months there in East Boston. Then I moved to New York City, tried my hand at stand-up comedy, did it for about a year. It was very challenging, but I really enjoyed it. It was cool getting in front of an audience. Randomly got an interview at the Trump Organization, took a job there, spent 2 years working the Trump Tower. Then I went on to become a recruiter. So I was placing creative talents in full-time jobs. And from there, I kind of placed myself at a front-end design development company. So I was at a company called Fantasy Interactive in Tribeca, and I started as a PR coordinator / recruiter, got promoted to business director, split my time between there and downtown New York and Stockholm, Sweden. And eventually I was in Maui, painting on the beach with my then girlfriend, now wife, Erin. And I realized that I had given people advice my whole life to follow their passion, and I wasn't listening to it myself. So July 2nd of 2009, I became a full-time artist. And that's what I'm doing ever since. Moved out to Victor, Idaho in 2016 from New York City. As you mentioned, member at Bronze Buffalo Ranch. And I love living here. I love living my passion, and I feel very blessed.
You know, in your life, you have a very unique path. But what inspired you to take the independent route? And you know, and what have been some of the biggest challenges and rewards representing yourself?
I mean, it's a great question. For those who aren't intimately familiar with the journey of a traditional fine artist, is typically the perfect journey would follow like this. You'd get a Bachelor of Fine Arts. You'd hopefully get a Master of Fine Arts, ideally at Yale, which is one of the premier MFA programs. Then you move to New York City. You kind of work at a gallery, sitting at the front, making $10, $20 an hour, greeting people. Then you try to get into a group show. And if you get into the group show, maybe a small gallery sees you, wants to represent you, take you on. Then you get poached by a mid-sized gallery, then hopefully a blue chip gallery. And that's the traditional path to success. But with my various corporate experiences, I realized that it was something I wanted to take on for myself. The beauty being self-represented is that if you're a represented artist by a gallery, galleries take 50% of everything. So that's kind of a big pill to swallow. You're also not in control of your own destiny. Artists don't typically have direct connections with their collectors. So what I wanted to do was build a traditional business. Literally, I could be selling paper clips. I could be selling cars. It's the same structure. It's about branding, marketing, consistency, building a market, establishing your price, honoring your prices, building, just basically collecting collectors. And so it was something I wanted to do on my own. And 15 years later, I'm still doing it.
Let's move into the business strategy and this art market. Now, you've created a unique business model outside the traditional art infrastructure. Could you elaborate on how you built and maintained your art market and why you chose this path over traditional representation?
Absolutely. Well, first, my late great college coach, when I told him I was going to be a full-time artist, he said, "Okay, distance running, stand-up comedy, and art. You like all the hard things in life." So being an artist is nuts. When I first left my ad job, I was well into the six figures. I was on a partner path with, at a company probably valued at $10 million at that point. But I really wanted to do it on my own. I went from that to $38,000 of sales my first year, which for a starting out artist, and I started out in 2009 when the economy was robust and fantastic, as I'm sure you remember, was very challenging. But what I realized I had to do was I had to develop a very strong relationship with my collectors. As far as building my market, the first painting I sold was my first Guggenheim in a 20-year series. I sold it to a family basically off the street who were visiting in New York from Milan, threw in shipping for that and another painting they bought like an idiot. And I realized it was far cheaper to fly and hand deliver them. So I did. So I've used this Guggenheim series as my standard. I asked a friend who worked in galleries what I should charge. He said $2,400. I did realize that price. I just recently sold another one in the series for $24,000. And with 4 years to go, my pie in the sky is I'd like to sell number 20 for $1 million, but I'm not holding my breath on that. Every January 1st, my prices go up 5 to 15% across the board for both original existing works and commissioned works. And when you're going from, say, $3,000 up 15%, you're not looking at a big shift. But once your prices start hitting $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, that 15% marks something significant. So I do that. The prices go up. The Guggenheim is kind of my pricing standard for my entire market. And one of the things that I do is that over time, every couple of years or during a significant market event, I send out updated appraisal letters to my collectors. And that's the way I've been able to substantiate my market outside of the traditional art structure.
It's interesting that the uniqueness of, how you determine value. So let's walk this through one more time. When you raise prices annually, you're basing it on performance.
Correct.
And review again, how do you determine the percentage increase? And what response do you get typically from your collectors when they say, "Hey, I just raised my prices from $2,500 to $25,000," right?
Right. So one of the things that, collectors, a lot of artists, they'll have an event, right? Like, so back in the day, like 2014, I had a painting that was valued at $8,000 and it went to auction for $14,000. Now, if I had jumped from 8 to 14 for that size of work across the board, at that point, I would have lost my entire collector base because collectors grow with the artists. So 5 to 15% is something that's very palatable. I'm very delighted to report that I've never had a down year since I started in 2009. I've had close to plateaus during significant world events. Typically, election years are a little bit rough. Election years with inflation are a little bit rougher. The pandemic had an initial negative impact and then a very big positive impact because everybody was buying all of these homes and they needed art for it. So there was kind of this great renaissance for artists and art sales in 2021 and 2022. But when the prices go up, eventually you will price out collectors. I have collectors who have 5 pieces. They were able to afford my work until maybe I hit 15,000 and then they kind of just tapped out, which is great. But they're also very happy to see that the market is appreciating that I'm always dialoguing with them. And I say, "Hey, listen, that piece that you bought in 2012 for 7,000 is now appraised at 24,000. And I want to make sure that your records are up to date because if there is ever, God forbid, a catastrophic fire or a flood or anything that's going on, you want to make sure that work is protected."
Now, I understand you do offer payment plans, and how has that impacted your business and the relationships with collectors, especially as your prices have increased?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that's really challenging about being an independent artist is, or any artist for that matter, is that it's feast or famine. I could wake up one day and I could sell 2 paintings and bam, there's $70,000 in my bank account. And that's fabulous. Then I could go 3 months without a sale. And that's just kind of the art market. It's not a direct career path where you could plan and say, okay, when the money comes in. But as my prices increased, I started offering payment plans, and I've done them for 6 months. I've done them up to 30 months. The benefit for the collector on a payment plan is that they lock in the price. So if it's going to take you 3 years to pay it off, that's fine. I don't charge. There's no surcharge or upcharge for that. I'm happy to lock it in. For me, it's fantastic because if I have 2 or 3 people paying off the painting every month, then I can actually have reliable income, which for an artist is kind of the dream because we very infrequently have consistent income. So I rely on that. And then I also rely on commissions, and commissions are fabulous because when I sign a commission, I get 50% on signing. And then I get 50% upon completion prior to delivery. So if you have commissions and people paying off a couple of paintings per month, then you can actually predict and forecast your income and then figure out how you want to use that money and invest it.
I love the fact that you provide appraisal letters to your collectors and also offer updates based on market events. And what a great community building opportunity, just staying in touch with them. Can you explain the importance of this practice and share how it's affected your relationship with your collectors?
Absolutely. Well, like I always tell artists, when you're an artist, you create art and collectors collect your art. Artists collect collectors. Your collectors are the most important people to your business in the world. The better your relationship and the stronger your relationship with your collectors, the more likely they are to introduce you to other people. And it's kind of just like any business development. You have your cornerstone core collectors. They introduce you, and then that's how you build an entire market, and then hopefully eventually an empire. So I'm always very, very adamant about staying in touch. I did have a painting on loan at a friend's house that wasn't even under contract. The house burned down. Turned out that I called my insurance agency and I said, hey, listen, I had this painting. It's a $24,000 painting. It was on loan, not on contract, off premise. This is the fire report. Here are 2 magazine articles it was featured in. Here's my price list to give you an idea of my market context. Took them 48 hours. They reviewed it. I had $1,000 deductible. They sent me a check for $23,000. I would still rather have the painting, but it's also a really nice peace of mind for my collectors to know that, I'm giving you these appraisal letters. They're filed with all the major insurance agencies and they're honored and respected, which is really, really important to me because these, when someone's making an investment, if you're buying a painting under 10,000, you can impulse buy that. Once you're over 10,000, it's an investment. And for me, it's extremely important for all my collectors to know that I'm committed to my career from now until the day I die. And I'm very careful about how the market is perceived.
Let's move into some of the personal insights. Now, how has your role as a parent influenced your art?
I can't even describe. First off, my wife is amazing. She is the one who encouraged me to quit my advertising career and become a full-time artist. She was doing this just as she was getting out of acupuncture school. So it was not a great time for us to both be going out and trying our own hands at entrepreneurship. But she was amazing. She continues to be my best supporter, my consigliere. We have 3 amazing kids, Coraline, Vega, and Esther. They're 7, 9, and 11. And, there's this joy and this way that children see the world that is so inspiring. And I watch them drawing and painting and creating sculptures, and they ooze creativity with everything that they do. And just having them on this planet inspires me. And it's been beautiful. Before I had kids and I went full time, I made a commitment to stick to a very regimented 9-to-5 schedule because a lot of my artist buddies, they like to get tuned up around 10 p.m. with Four Loko and some other stuff. And then they're painting till 7 in the morning. And I realized that would be a very short lifespan for me. So it worked out that I had the infrastructure for fatherhood before I became a father, but having the kids is incredible. And it's just, they inspire me every time.
Jason, one thing about the art world is a lot of people are artists first, business people second. And I think you're kind of bucking the trend that you have a good business acumen. So you're now advising and aspiring artists looking to build a career outside the traditional art world. How would you advise that individual?
Well, I always tell people if I start working with them and they're young and before they go to school, I tell them, listen, you don't need to get an art degree, get a business degree, because you're always going to create on the side. I ended up getting my business degree by de facto working in, 4 different industries before I became a full-time artist. I'm the beneficiary of an incredible mentor. His name is Robert Oranger. He's one of my first collectors. He introduced me to an entire world. He had me speak to his Tiger 21 group in Montreal and Toronto. And that literally changed my entire life. So, being the beneficiary of such an amazing mentor, I take it very seriously when I have an opportunity to mentor someone who's young. Mentorship is incredible because you help people avoid mistakes. You give them your wisdom. And the most satisfying thing for a mentor is to see their mentee taking the advice to heart, executing it. And that's what inspires that relationship. You can't just walk up and say, hey, you want to be my mentor? It kind of develops organically. But for the kids and the young people, or even someone who's 70 and retired and wants to get into art, I just say, listen, take it all the way back. You got to create a brand. You have to have a visual identity. You have to have a marketing strategy. You need a website. When I critique MFA classes, I don't critique the art. I put their art on the wall and I say, sell me this art. That's what they need to do. They need to understand that it is a commodity. And a lot of artists have a hard time with that because they feel like they've created and given part of their soul to the work. And it's hard to put a price on that, but you have to objectively put a price on it. And you have to be comfortable with selling it. You have to be comfortable with someone saying, okay, $28,000. Why? And you have to be able to answer that question.
Jason, I know you're recording from your studio in Victor, Idaho, but how does a person outside of your area find out more information about your artwork?
Well, definitely if you're in the Teton Valley, Jackson Hole area, it's always great to have people here at Borbay Studios and Gallery. But Borbay.com, Borbay.com is my cornerstone. I am on social, but I got to be honest, I just had a bit of a kerfuffle with Instagram. They disabled my account for absolutely no reason. And it was out for 2 weeks, and it made me realize how important it is to have the central location to be found online. So for me, Borbay.com is the place. Has all the information there. I have a contact page there. I'd love to talk about art, creativity, the industry, marketing, business, every aspect of it. So if anyone ever wants to reach me, they can just reach me at jason@borbay.com directly, and I'm happy to talk shop.
Jason, thanks for being with us here on American Dreams today.
Alan, it was an honor. I thank you so much, and I cannot wait to have your book signed. So the next time you're here, you're coming to the gallery.